I'd like to start off with Bryan Grady, Deputy District Attorney of Special Operations, Philadelphia District Attorney's Office.
Good morning, Chairman Calderon, Representative Lynch, members of the General Assembly, Lieutenant Kane.
You want to mention, just for the record?
With me is Greg Rowe, Chief of Legislation, Philadelphia District Attorney's Office.
I work with him a lot in Harrisburg, so.
Prior to beginning my testimony too, I'd be remiss if I didn't express gratitude to Delaware County, probably something of which you're unaware. About 2 years ago, Delaware County, Darby Borough effectuated the arrest of a homicide fugitive from Philadelphia who was recently tried. I prosecuted him in Philadelphia. He was found guilty of third-degree murder, sentenced to 45 years in prison, and but for the arrest of Corporal Jules Cartapella from Darby County, Darby Borough. That arrest never would have occurred. That prosecution would have not happened on a 6-year-old homicide. So thank you, Delaware County, for that. District Attorney Seth Williams would have liked to be here. However, he is presently with his Army Reserve unit. I think he had been in Texas, and he's now, I think, in Fort Dix. Otherwise, he would have been here. He sent me in his stead, and because I'm speaking on behalf of District Attorney Williams, I'll stick to the script, because I wouldn't want to stick him with my rants. District Attorney Williams strongly supports Representative Lentz's bill, House Bill 2536. This important piece of legislation, as Representative Lentz has just mentioned, would close a loophole which has begun to eviscerate Pennsylvania laws related to the issuance of concealed carry permits, which is of a growing concern in Philadelphia County. This is occurring because under current law and practice, Pennsylvanians whose concealed carry permits have been denied or revoked, or who are otherwise ineligible to obtain permits in the first place, have nonetheless received permits from other states and lawfully used them here in Pennsylvania. This is not a theoretical loophole. Our state police reports that approximately 3,100 Pennsylvanians have exploited this loophole to date. They typically apply for a Florida permit, while there are 2 other states, I believe Utah and New Hampshire. Typically what we see is Florida. This doesn't make sense from both a states' rights and public safety perspective. From a states' rights argument, our legislature has set forth the requirements for obtaining a Pennsylvania concealed carry permit. These requirements are contained in 18 PACS 6109. By way of example, a license may not be issued if the applicant would be likely to act in a manner dangerous to public safety, is not of sound mind, has been committed to a mental institution, is a habitual drunkard, or an addict, or an illegal alien. All things which we can investigate under our purview. The local county sheriff is vested with responsibility, as Representative Lentz has suggested, of determining whether the applicant has met the statutory criteria for obtaining a permit, except in Philadelphia, where the Philadelphia police make that determination. The law works well as written by the legislature, and typically in excess of 90% of concealed carry permit applications are granted in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. Why would we allow officials in Florida, Utah, or any other state to decide which Pennsylvanians may carry a concealed weapon within Pennsylvania? In Florida, it is the Department of Agriculture who determines whether an out-of-state applicant may receive a permit to carry. We should not cede important law enforcement decisions that will have an impact on public safety to officials from other states, who, by the way, do not cede that luxury to us. They don't know our Commonwealth, our towns. As Representative Lentz has suggested, we have many sheriffs throughout the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania who are intimately aware with people who reside within their jurisdiction. Further, we have many police departments within the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, from Allegheny to Philadelphia, who are intimately aware with people who live within their jurisdictions where they can provide insight to the individual applying for that permit. The following examples of individuals in Pennsylvania who should not have been allowed to carry a concealed firearm, but due to the loophole have received a permit from Florida. One individual convicted in 1997 of terroristic threats and carrying a gun without a license in 2004. He was prohibited from possessing a firearm within the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. In 2008, however, this defendant obtained a permit to carry a concealed firearm from Florida, notwithstanding his prohibition from possessing that firearm in the first place. In 2009, he was stopped by police for careless driving. He refused to cooperate and was later determined to be in possession of his Florida permit, which rendered police useless to disarm him. Another defendant convicted in 1987 for delivering marijuana, and convicted in 1994 for an out-of-state felony for possessing a forged instrument license and aggravated unlicensed operator. In 2008, he was convicted in New York of DUI. In early 2010, he was arrested in Philadelphia for carrying a firearm. So an individual who's been arrested 3 separate times and convicted this very year was arrested in Philadelphia for carrying a firearm on the public streets. But he had in his possession a valid permit to carry issued from Florida. He also had an active protection from abuse order from New York, which would not have expired until June of 2010. The final incident was a warrant issued for a homicide suspect. When detectives tried to serve that warrant, the suspect, as frequently happens, fled. The police found a stolen bulletproof vest from the police department and 2 shotguns in his house. He had applied for a Pennsylvania permit, and hopefully due to the diligence of Lieutenant King, he was denied that permit. But Florida issued him a permit and gave him the right to carry a firearm in Philadelphia. These are just a few examples, and they're examples from the district attorney. But law enforcement sides with the district attorney on these issues. The Philadelphia police officers and the police officers of every other police department in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania take the street every day. They get up, they put their boots on the floor, they put their uniforms on, and they put their lives on the line. Not for themselves, for the people sitting in this room, and the children of the people sitting in this room. This legislation, proposed by Representative Lentz, is supported by the Pennsylvania State Police, the Pennsylvania Sheriffs, International Association of Chiefs of Police, Western Pennsylvania Chiefs of Police, Allegheny County Chiefs of Police, and Pennsylvania Law Enforcement Gun Violence Police Group. The job of law enforcement is difficult enough. To not close this loophole would be disrespecting the men and women who put on that uniform every day. Supporting this legislation gives people a critical opportunity to stand up and do something that not everyone gets the ability to do on a daily basis. And that's the right thing. Representative Lentz has put squarely on the court the ability of legislature to do the right thing and support the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania and its residents. The District Attorney of Philadelphia, Mr. Williams, fully supports the right of law-abiding citizens to carry concealed weapons, provided they meet statutory requirements as promulgated by the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. House Bill 2536 simply seeks to ensure that those who do not meet the Pennsylvania statutory requirements or whose permits have been denied or revoked are not permitted to carry concealed firearms in Pennsylvania. This is common sense. This is pro-public safety. Thank you.
Thank you. Questions from the Representative Nicosi and Mr. Lentz?
Out of the 3,100 out-of-state persons who have the license from like Florida or wherever,
Right.
besides the 2 that you outlined, how many have been committed a crime having a concealed license? You mentioned two.
We don't find out you have a Florida permit unless you've committed a crime. So every single one of them, they're either being pulled over for traffic stops, for committing some type of crime, whether it's violation of motor vehicle code, or they're being stopped at crime scenes. Last week, just last week, we stopped an individual at a crime scene in Northwest Philadelphia who walked up to the crime scene with a gun on his hip. His Pennsylvania permit had been revoked. After his Pennsylvania permit was revoked, he got a Florida permit. This is last week. He's now on the street in Northwest Philadelphia at a crime scene with a Florida permit after we revoked his Pennsylvania permit. We had an individual at the airport not too long ago who was lying in wait with a fully loaded AK-47 and a fully loaded Beretta. He was stopped by police because he was parked illegally. He had a Florida permit, so he had a right. We couldn't take those guns from him. However, the AK was loaded and in his car, which is a separate violation. So we were able to take that, forfeit it. But the short answer is, we don't find out about this until the police have stopped you. So you've committed some violation or crime in order for the police to stop you and you to present your Florida permit. We see it with drug dealers on a regular basis, where they'll be stopped Southwest Philadelphia, South Philadelphia, Northwest Philadelphia, and they have permits to carry from Florida.
So there was 3,100. There was 3,100 persons who obtained license out of state that committed a crime.
Now, there's 3,100 people who have obtained licenses from out of state. Of those 3,100 people, all the ones that we stopped have been because they committed a crime. We don't keep the numbers because we can't charge them with a crime.
That's the question. The question is, you pointed out two.
Yeah.
You're saying there's 3,100 persons, Pennsylvanians, who went to Florida or wherever and got a license for a concealed weapon.
Right.
Out of that 3,100, you mentioned two. You have no idea how many last year or the year before or this year have violated the law.
No, because we can't charge them with a crime. If the legislature gave us the ability to charge them with a crime, we would have those statistics because the police department would process them and the district attorney's office would charge them. However, the legislature has precluded us from charging them with a crime. The only reason I can give you these examples is because they've been brought to my attention at the time the person was stopped. Otherwise, we would have no idea. There's police officers on a daily basis pulling people over. They produce that Florida permit. The police officers know they have to let them go. That never hits the system. So unless you charge every police officer in the city of Philadelphia, 6,500 or so police officers, instead of every time you pull a guy over with a Florida permit, you need to make, let's call it a Florida loophole report and submit that and let the district attorney's office get it back. Then we can provide those statistics to you. But that would be a violation of their rights. And we're not about violating people's rights, we're about enforcing the laws. And the laws that stands from this legislature is that we can't charge them with a crime.
How many Pennsylvanians who have license to carry concealed license have gotten the statistics now? How many have gotten in trouble because they committed a crime?
I can only tell you anecdotally that I rarely see the prosecution of an individual who is not charged with a 6106 or 6108 violation because they had a permit to carry. However, they went out and shot somebody or committed an armed robbery. I would say, and again, this is anecdotally, I don't have the numbers on this, 99.9% of all armed robberies and shootings are done by people with either illegal guns or guns that they're not permitted to carry on the street.
So the difference between Pennsylvania's law on concealed weapons and the difference between Florida or whatever is we're saying that the other states do not go through the process of finding how the applicant behaves, if they got a background and whatever. So that's really the difference that we're talking about.
That's absolutely the difference. It's 3 states we're talking about, to my understanding: Florida, Utah, and New Hampshire. Really what we see is Florida. We have not had many or any encounters with New Hampshire or Utah.